Hello, my name is Ryan, and this PowerPoint presentation is for the AVIA 342 Advanced GPS Navigation class. I am also a student at Kilo Golf Mike Uniform Airport, which is an airport in Greenville, South Carolina. I wanted to plan a flight to an airport that only had a GPS approach into it and was not a very long distance away, so I decided to plan a flight from KGMU to KAJR, Habersham Airport. In planning for this flight, I considered 14 CFR 91.103 pre-flight actions. For this flight, I found the airport information from the chart supplement, which shows information about the airports. And that's what this slide shows, is information about the runway lengths and what to expect at the airports. As you will see later on in this presentation, this was not an actual IFR flight, but if this were an actual IFR flight into instrument meteorological conditions, I took off on runway 1, and for runway 1 it shows that I should climb to 2,800 feet MSL before turning northwest or west on a direction. So that's what the takeoff minimums paper shows from the chart supplement. And that's what this slide shows as well. In planning the flight, I use a few different ways to look at planning a flight, looking at weather and the routes to take on a flight. I utilize Sky Vector as one of the sources, which shows the low altitude IFR charts, and it also helps in planning for flights. So this is what these screenshots are showing. It shows the flight plan that I decided on, and it shows the flight log using Sky Vector. In addition to Sky Vector, I also have a subscription to ForeFlight and planned the flight on ForeFlight as well, and it's very helpful in determining which airways to use and what's the safe altitudes to fly at, and also in looking at weather. You can get weather briefings from the ForeFlight app. So I use that, and I also have a screenshot of the Garmin G1000 with the flight that I had planned. I planned it into the flight plan, and then I have it displayed on the map, and that's what this image is showing. This is a screenshot of the actual flight plan that I had planned into the Garmin G1000. I had my initial airport was Kilo Golf Mike Uniform, and then I had it planned to go to direct to Petal, and then from Petal to the ODF VOR, and then to Corsair, which is an intersection along an airway, and then to go from Corsair to Iubu, which is an initial approach fix for the GPS RNAV 6 approach into Habersham. And then it shows Kudeb, and the runway 6 is the points along the route for the flight into Habersham. For this flight, I utilized my X-Plane home flight simulator that has a Cessna aircraft with a Garmin G1000 in it. In this screenshot, I have the flight planned, the autopilot set to turn on once I'm at a safe altitude. In this screenshot, I have departed KGMU Airport and am climbing to an initial altitude of 4,000 feet and have the autopilot set to climb at 85 knots, and also am utilizing the heading mode and to climb on a 006 degree heading. And this is just it was to climb to 2,800 feet before turning northwest or west. And you can see I've reached 2,980 feet, and I'm about to start turning west. So I've climbed to that altitude and about to start turning west. In this screenshot, I am still using the autopilot, and I have reached 4,000 feet MSL and I'm now using the nav mode of navigating to fly from the pedal intersection to the ODF VOR, utilizing the GPS to do so. I am also monitoring the ELW VOR on bearing 2 and the ODF VOR on bearing 1 on the CDI, but the GPS is the primary mode of navigation at the time. I also have the moving map displayed, which shows the current leg of the flight. Overall, this Garmin G1000 was relatively easy to use and to fly by and to navigate by. Here's a screenshot of the moving map display on the multifunction display, and also I have the flight plan up as well, and it shows that I have transitioned from UBU to QDEB. The UBU was the initial approach fix, QDEB was the final approach fix. So that is what this screenshot is showing. Now, let's see, I made it safely on the ground to Habersham Airport. I'm sure I've not learned all of the buttonology there is to learn about the Garmin G1000. I did find it relatively easy to program and fly by. I am more familiar now with this Garmin G1000. I'm even more familiar with traditional style gauges in an aircraft. That's what I mainly fly when in flight training. After flying an aircraft with the traditional style gauges in it, it brings me to the only complaint that I have about the Garmin G1000. The Garmin G1000 has just the one HSI. I know that it has the bearing 1 and bearing 2 where you can monitor the VOR1 and VOR2 or nav1 and nav2. But the aircraft that I fly, it has 2 CDIs and a Garmin GPS 650 in it. The Garmin GPS 650 can utilize the CDI 1, and then CDI 2 is totally independent of the Garmin GPS 650. So I like that setup a little bit better than having just the one HSI in the Garmin G1000. In considering this flight, you know, it was just a simulated flight, so I don't have to worry about any kind of NOTAMs or weather issues or known traffic delays by ATC. The runway lengths were long enough for takeoff and landing. I didn't have to have any alternates. Fuel requirements were good, and the takeoff and landing performance data was, you know, it was for these flights. The long runways were plenty long enough. After taking this flight, it was a VFR flight, so I should have chosen an altitude of 4,500 instead of flying 4,000 for most of the flight, and then transitioning to 4,200 feet for the final part going into Habersham. So that was one thing that I see that I did wrong on this flight. So thankfully it was just a simulated flight and not an actual cross-country flight. But overall, I like the Garmin G1000 and found it relatively easy to use. And here's one final image. This was the image from my ForeFlight iPad. I have the iPad linked, or ForeFlight app linked to my X-Plane home flight simulator, and it shows the green path shows the flight that I took, the flight path that I took for this flight. So that's just one little final screenshot to show that I did take the flight and enjoyed doing it. And so I hope this presentation was beneficial and enjoyable to watch.